I would say that this is a sorry moment in the history of the EU, isn't it?
Well, it's quite an important moment, I think, for the European Union itself. It could, in the long run, be even existential because what we're seeing in this particular case on viruses and vaccines is all of the flaws in one particular episode of the European Union and the structure on which it's based. And those riots that you've seen in Amsterdam over the last few days are perhaps just the beginning of the eruption of frustration and anger amongst members of the European Union public about the way that the European Union has been dragging its feet. Now, this attempt to stop the further export of AstraZeneca or Pfizer vaccines to Britain, which was what this boils down to, whichever way you dress it up, is because of the fact that the European Union still hasn't, after all this time, given its approval to the AstraZeneca vaccine. We've been pumping it out now for more than a week. We've vaccinated nearly 700,000 people, if not already 700,000 and more.
Yeah.
And we'll hit our target by the time we get to mid-February of vaccinating all of the most vulnerable people, while in the European Union, they're still dragging a long way behind.
Indeed. And this move, this is just naked politics, isn't it?
It is. Well, it's a cry of pain as well, because quite clearly the European Union has been caught completely with its pants down, because they could have done what we did, which was to have ordered these drugs, these vaccines, back in July when we ordered hundreds of millions of doses, and or millions of doses, and they failed to do anything at all until now. And one of the spokeswomen for the European Commission said that this was because they had to safeguard all 27 member states. But by trying to safeguard all 27 member states, in other words, moving as one, they've left the European Union of 27 member states extremely vulnerable to a very large number of unnecessary deaths.
Well, indeed. And it strikes me as having echoes of and it mirrors the Brexit negotiations, which is putting the ideology of the project before common sense.
Well, I think you're right. I think it sums that up in a nutshell, because the European Union is trying to claim that it's not a state, not a federal superstate, while at the same time acting as if it is. And it cannot do so as long as all of the individual member states have a right to say something. So if they've got a vote or a say, the European Union cannot move as one without permission. Permission takes weeks or months to get, and that's why we're in a situation where they cannot order vaccines.
Indeed. So clearly there needs to be change in the EU. Proof of that is that we left. If David Cameron had been offered more compromises by Angela Merkel and others when he went back for his renegotiation, we might still be there. But we're out now. And I wonder whether even diehard Remainers are beginning to count their blessings.
I think quite a lot of people who voted Remain have come to the view that actually we're doing pretty well outside. What you've seen in the last few days, not least of which, of course, was the Nissan announcement that they're doing better than they expected after Brexit. And in fact, increasing production and distribution simply because of the fact that they're no longer bound by European rules. Now, this is a particularly interesting case because Nissan, you may remember, twice threatened to leave Britain altogether because of Brexit, and twice backed down and decided to stay. And now they're actually trumpeting it.
Well, indeed so. And you know something, there's a wider issue here, Trevor. Really enjoyed your column this week in The Sun. Looking beyond the vaccine, the rollout has been a triumph for this government. But huge criticism for the Prime Minister for not suggesting and implying a timetable for our exit from these damaging coronavirus measures, particularly lockdown. Do you think we'll hear anything from the Prime Minister today from Downing Street at 5 p.m. that might give the British people some much needed optimism?
I'm not sure what he will say. He's probably gone as far as he dares to, with so many doves, as they call them, in the coronavirus camp, by saying that they may be able to ease some of the precautions by mid-February. What he's talking about there, I suspect, is that he is desperately hoping that we can move out of lockdown and into tier 2 or 3 instead, which then gives us some of the freedom of movement around the country, the ability to go for a swim or go to the gym, maybe tennis, golf, fishing's all right, I suppose. But the fact is that we need, I think, some sort of roadmap, not just for those sort of leisure facilities. I think he is under intense pressure now, more than he might have anticipated, to get the schools back open and to get them open again in time for half term. The Sun is waging a campaign on this, as indeed are other newspapers. I think that you've got people like David Blunkett rallying behind it. And it's almost impossible to imagine that the government isn't putting this right at the top of its list of priorities when you've got a generation of school kids whose education is being, in some cases, destroyed irreparably, and in many cases resulting in depression and mental health issues.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And that was very much the tone of your article in The Sun this week. It's an emergency to get children back to school and get society unlocked as quickly as possible. Do you think that the government have been guilty of moving the goalposts? Because when this all started, we had 3 weeks to flatten the curve. And it was very much about saving the NHS. Well, when we get to mid-February, clearly the most vulnerable will be protected, which is wonderful, wonderful news. 88% of the people who face a mortal threat from coronavirus should be safe by early March. That will reduce pressure on the NHS. Why isn't that the point at which we taste freedom?
One of the big problems is, Mark, that you're talking common sense. And the politicians and the experts are saying something different. And they are protected, as we speak at least, by the opinion polls, which show that the majority of people who I think have been scared stiff by some of the things that the government and ministers and health experts have been saying for the last 10 months are way behind, right behind them on the measures they're taking. I think that's going to change as we all get the vaccination and feel what the hell is going on. Why are we being locked up? The NHS by that time will be safe. The wards will not be crowded. The death toll will have come down. What are we going to keep locking the country down for? Is it going to be until there are no more deaths at all, which of course is impossible? Or is it just to keep the economy under wraps and under restrictions, which is what, of course, the left wing and many of these experts are quite avowedly left wing politically.
Trevor, you've been a prominent and respected figure in the press for many years. Has it surprised you the way that some journalists have gone after others for daring to challenge the cosy COVID consensus?
Well, I think that one of the problems, Mark, to be absolutely honest, is that the spike in infections over the last couple of months and the deaths, which have risen to record levels, has given everyone pause for thought. So what we've got, though, and what we must cherish, is the fact that we're first out of the stocks with the vaccine, which is working wonders. I mean, you can already see almost visibly before your eyes the falling numbers of infections, the falling numbers of deaths, and as we speak also, I think there will be a fall in the number of hospital admissions. That is going to be a wonderful thing. It's a great plus for this government, and they should celebrate it instead of trying to make things harder by cracking down on travel, airports, and all the rest of it. People want to believe this is the beginning of the end, and they should see some light at the end of the tunnel as a result.
Final thought from you, Trevor. Unemployment, it looks like it's going to be a big, big headache for the government for many years to come. Awful figures, particularly a rise in redundancies among young people. I'm old enough to remember the stubborn unemployment of the early 1980s. Do you think that we're going to have to face a problem like that again? Or do you think there's hope that unemployment will essentially achieve a sort of V-shaped curve where it goes up and then comes down quickly?
It all depends how long we allow this to carry on. I think people have not yet begun to understand or appreciate the cost of this, not just in deaths and infections, but in really hard currency terms. I mean, you know about mental health, you know about the cancer waiting lists and the failure to treat people who have got serious illnesses. But one day the bills are going to start coming in for this. And at the moment, everyone's on furlough, or they're retired, or they're sitting at home, working from home happily. But there's a price to pay for this. And one day we'll get that bill and we'll think, what the hell are we going to do about it?